I'm keeping my reading very short today because Gabrielle has a lot of amazing content to cover, and I really want to give her the space and the time, and for all of us the benefit of that. So welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining the Reinvention virtual chat. Gabrielle, thank you so much for being a part of it. You look absolutely gorgeous and radiant today, and I'm so excited for us to have this. Thanks for joining those who have taken a time out of their day today. We are recording this session, and it will be shared both on the Reinvention Exchange on our virtual chat tab. So in about a week, anybody that missed out that you're going to want to share this with, please let them know. And I will send out an email later on this evening to everybody with how to reach. Gabrielle will put information in the chat and all of that good stuff. But in the meantime, just want to welcome everybody. So I'm going to read a little something from one of my favorite chapters in the book, which is chapter 3, Hello, Are You Still in There? And the topic of the subheading in this chapter is Feed Your Soul. When we let our dreams go, we let part of ourselves go with them. We get grumpy, we get angry and resentful. We start to assume things will never work out for us. We have an empty spot in our hearts that never feels full, no matter what we do. The little rock star grew up. He went to school. He got a job. He started a family. The guitar he played as a teenager gathered dust in the same garage he used to practice in, until eventually it was sold or stashed in the attic, figuratively and literally. So here you are, 25 years later. The lawyer, developer, marketer, caretaker, chained to your desk, your life duties, commitments, financial responsibilities, and perhaps your childhood dreams. I ask you this, when was the last time you picked up a guitar? How would you feel if you brought yourself a new one, took lessons on YouTube, or formed a garage band with your buddies who feel the same way? It's okay to nurture your decadent, ridiculous, childish whims. Hello, are you still in there? Maybe you won't become the next Eddie Van Halen. Rest in peace. I mean, how ironic that he is in this chapter, right? But what about taking a few lessons? Sound ridiculous? Fabulous. It should. It will nurture your soul in a way you can't imagine and clearly haven't dared to dream of doing. Perhaps when you go to work on Monday, you'll have a skip in your step or a smile on your face, but that just wasn't there before. The goal here is to create balance. Dig deep and tap into the things that give you a sense of accomplishment, satisfaction, and stimulation. Find activities that simply make you happy while getting back in touch with your true self. I can't think of a better way to lead into the word pleasure than talking about touching your true self. And I don't mean that physically per se, but
although, you know,
we could, yeah. So that to me was a beautiful way to open today's chat with Gabrielle. And before I turn the mic over to her, because she's just got so much to share, I'm going to give a little history of Gabrielle and Kathi, and I am going to share a little bit more about who Gabrielle is, and then we're going to launch into this chat. So Gabrielle and I had the pleasure of meeting, oh my gosh, 20 years ago, 18 years ago, 15 years ago. I don't even know what the number is. I should look up that PowerPoint and see what year was the Santa Barbara International Film Festival that we worked on. But at the time, she was with the New Yorker magazine, and they were a sponsor of the Santa Barbara Film Festival. And that was our first interlude with one another. And she went on to work with Condé Nast, W Magazine, the Tribeca Film Festival. I mean, we're talking producer, partnership aficionado, director. This woman has worn so many hats, but I'm just going to list some of her accolades that she doesn't even put in her bio anymore, but I had to brag a little bit about her. Brides Magazine, Billboard Magazine, Oprah Magazine, Clear Channel, Wall Street Journal, where we actually had lunch together while she was working at the Wall Street Journal and hooked up in New York and got to like re-engage around all kinds of fun things. CNN, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I mean, you are this Renaissance woman, serial reinventor, pleasure seeker, who I think in your own way, you have really found the pleasure in so much of what you've done, but now you're harnessing it in such a different way. I'm going to read your official bio because I don't want to kind of miss a beat on the things that you recognize in yourself. Gabrielle has spent her life exploring reinvention. When people ask her how she's had so many successful careers, she responds with, I was passion hunting. Starting out in advertising in the world of magazine publishing in New York City, she quickly gained extraordinary experience, contacts, and drive, and decided to strike out on her own as a creative and never say never marketing expert. Gabrielle has produced award-winning marketing campaigns, events for the likes of Billboard magazine and Oprah, dreamt up and wrote a local food and drink blog called A Lady Walks Into a Bar, my favorite, spent a 2-year stint at the Wall Street Journal, launching and building their global branded content division, and now has followed her passion to becoming a certified life coach, where her goal is to create a world where women and girls remove their limitation and see life through only the lens of possibility and power. And I feel like everything that you have done has brought you to this moment in your life. You have such an appreciation of the highs and the lows, the ins and the outs, what it takes, what it took, being a woman in God knows all those media rooms. There are a lot of men in those rooms. And just the ability to pay it forward in the work that you're doing now has got to be extraordinary. And I know it is. I know your energy. I know your passion for what you do. People in your midst are like, you know, it makes like the hair on my arms like stand up because your energy is extraordinary. And I'm so lucky to call you a friend. And I only wish we lived in the same city or I was still in New York every month, because every time I see you, we just like get closer and closer. And I just adore you. So,
thank you.
So I do have a couple of questions, but I didn't actually make a lot of questions for you today because I kind of want you to take the mantle and run with it. And hold on, let me let Jill into Jill's coming in. Hold on.
Okay.
People
that
in the
was
waiting
like
room.
so much. That was like that was an almost I'm not crying, you're crying moment just then, just so everybody's aware. It's been a bit of an emotional week for me as it is. And I'm such a like, I cry, happy tears, sad tears kind of thing. So that was such a beautiful introduction. I'm blushing and humbled and just so grateful to be here with you. So thank you for the opportunity to be part of
every word of it. And I love that I know you behind all the accolades, and I could list 20 media companies and every accolade of everything you've done, but it's not only what you've done, honestly, it's how you've done it. And I think you and I are such kindred spirits in that way, because it's our approach to life. It is all about the way we move through life with our passion and our joy, and we impact those around us with that kind of energy. And I just love that. So I'm going to stop hyperbolizing and telling you how fabulous you are for a moment so that I can really actually ask you a question. And I want to really give you the floor and adjust my chair at the same time. So truly the definition of a serial reinventor that has pursued your pleasure in the workspace. Maybe a little pain came with that too. So when was it that you truly realized the power of pleasure in your life? And like me, free-spirited and pursuing things you were passionate about, doing with a lot of diverse background and companies, what was kind of your aha moment in all of this? And I know you're going to take us through an incredible PowerPoint and sort of, you know, a really beautiful presentation and conversation today. But I just want to kind of touch on a few things before you go there. So I've only got 4 questions for you, and then we're going to like go there. So just kind of those aha moments as this incredible life journey you've been on.
I think that truly I was raised in an environment where I understood the importance of pleasure, like of a good meal, of laughter, of road trips. My dad was like awesome at planning road trips, and he and I were travel buddies when I was in my 20s, and would go to Italy for 3 weeks. And, sort of like the pleasure of life, I feel like was ingrained with me, combined with growing up as a people pleaser, like be the happy kid, be the one that's always distracting away from the chaos that was happening in other parts of my family. I think I think part of my DNA is happy. And I really do believe while you can create happiness, I think you're either like, I'm just someone who mostly wakes up happy. Doesn't mean I don't have my down days. So I think that combined with this example of pleasure in the everyday that my parents demonstrated or somehow I took away was sort of ingrained in me. And then one of the first things I thought of was when I was a young New Yorker out of college and I worked at this ad agency, rollerblading. Do you guys, I mean, like some of you are so young, you probably don't even know what a rollerblade is, but rollerblades are roller skates, but all the wheels are in one line down the middle of the skate.
The best.
And it was a really popular thing in the city, and you'd rollerblade around New York. So I used to rollerblade to work from my apartment, for anybody who knows New York, from 79th and Central Park West to 19th Street and Fifth Avenue, like down the middle of frickin' Fifth Avenue. And it just used to bring me a lot of pleasure. And so like I might get to work a little sweaty and I'd put on some wrinkled skirt or whatever, but like I was all down for that mode of transportation, So I think there was like some ahas in my 20s. Plus I think like, there are people who are like thrill seekers. I think like I'm a pleasure seeker.
Yeah.
Like if you can find it and it is pleasurable, like I'm like one of those mushroom hunters. What are those called? Like that sniff out mushrooms. I sniff out pleasure. So I think I perfected the pleasure seeking ability in my 20s. And I think I realized pretty young, because my dad got sort of seriously sick a couple of times throughout my young adult life, that life was really short. And that it was really important to enjoy as much of it all as you can. And I think the biggest aha impact was him getting really sick and me going like, wow, life's really short.
Yeah. And you know what? I've seen that. As a matter of fact, this is a story in my book, Amy Lobati's story, who lost her brother. And it was a catalyst moment for her to like, put everything that she thought life was on hold and really re-examine that. And sometimes it takes a moment like that to make you really appreciate where you're at and what the future holds.
And I think the other last sort of aha, and it was a pivotal career moment, was, and I just talked about this earlier with someone, that we tend to chase a title, a thing, a goal, right? Like we're out there trying to get there. And I can remember being in my 20s and I was like, all I want is to be like the creative services director and make $100,000 a year. And then I'll have like made it, right? So like there I get there at 29 and I'm engaged to be married and all the things. And I was never more miserable in my life. I'm like, this is it.
Right.
What was I running so hard toward? And then when I ended up, like I did that job for a year and I had a heck of a boss back then. And really just was like, I am like so out of here. I like pieced out, quit like against every mentor's recommendation, quit without another job. And then I started my freelance career, which ended up working out pretty well for me. So, but I remember thinking life is too short to wake up and run into New York City and deal with all of this BS all day long, to come home exhausted and stressed and not be able to sleep for like this title and this annual salary when I'm treated like a piece of garbage, like for what?
Right.
So
this is actually a nice segue into what else I wanted to bring up, is that, what was it, about 3 years ago, you hired a business coach.
Yeah.
And, it feels like that there was what was the impetus for that? What was it that made you kind of say, I think I'm at a crossroads where that would serve me? Because I think many people question when and how and who, might be able to help them get unstuck. You know, I think it's the reason a lot of people are picking up my book right now. You know, we get to certain places in our life and, you know, we talk to friends or family, or we don't talk to people. But what was it that made you feel like a conversation with you know, with a coach could be helpful? And what discoveries did you unearth about yourself? And what truths, you know, did you have to confront? Was it scary? You know,
Oh God.
you had to confront a lot of stuff. And I know we could do 3 hours on that, and I don't want to get too stuck on it.
Get the
So,
couch,
you know, maybe
tequila, and like, let's have at it.
So let's
yeah.
do that briefly, because I feel like it was a pivotal moment for you and it helped shift, right?
So right around, I'm going to go a little bit before that, and then I'll get to the life coaching thing. But right around, so I have a birthday coming up on Sunday. So I'm going to say about 6 years ago. Thank you. So about 6 years ago, I was going through, you know, another midlife, I don't know, every 20 minutes, whatever those things are, epiphany, crisis, aha moment. And I took a trip to China to go visit friends there, and like woke up again. I felt like I had been in, like, you know, Sleeping Beauty, like just out, and woke up in China, like, oh my God, in there I was, like, woke up in Shanghai, you know. And something happened on that trip. I was in the middle of producing. I owned and operated a food and drink festival in Portland, Maine at the time, called Harvest on the Harbor. And it was right before I was producing the second year. And it was very strange with my business partner and I, who was also at the time a personal friend. And notice at the time. And I felt like something was up, because I was freaking miserable again. And here I am, like, and I used to make a joke, and I think this is where the universe speaks to us, and we've been trained to ignore it. And part of my coaching is helping women start to listen in again, is that I knew I was being called to other things before I bought this food festival. And I knew I was being called to other things before the Wall Street Journal thing. And I knew, you know, and I was ignoring it. And the Shanghai moment was some sort of awakening that happened. And suddenly in my social feed, this executive and life coach who coaches women in two spaces, entrepreneurs to make more money and women who want to lose weight without dieting. And I was like, who's this chick? Guess who she was? She was a chick that I worked with in 2012 when I did this Oprah event. And she was like on like a sub stage, and she was one of Martha Beck's like coaches that trained with Martha Beck. And Martha Beck is Oprah's coach, and I worked with Martha Beck. And I was like, who is this chick? And this chick is like a Midwestern ball of effing fire that I became obsessed with. So I would follow her on social and whatever. She is who I ended up hiring to help me figure out the food festival conundrum. I loved it. I had started my blog. I'm an ideator. I had 4 other entrepreneurial ventures that I was about to start. I was going to do, I won't even bore you with like the insane details of all the things I was going to do, but suffice to say, I was at a crossroads. I hired this woman, and I started doing some of her free challenges, which led me toward doing these 7 steps that she teaches women who want to lose weight. It's a process called DARE. She wrote a book about it. So I do this DARE in her, like, one of her challenges, and I end up winning the opportunity to model in the marketing campaign for the book. So I'm like, oh yeah, I want to do it, because I think I'm going to be like on a poster. And then I end up in my underwear
in the book.
Look at what opposite.
Add pleasure into your day.
So that happens, and I decide that not only is the universe now screaming, become a life coach, but was also like, I realized doing these 7 sort of steps that she teaches women to how to lose weight, like, changed my whole freaking life in ways that had nothing to do with me trying to accept my body more. But I also accepted my body more. And by the way, this was 2 summers ago, and I'm like in a God pod that's now, 30 pounds lighter. And I didn't, wasn't trying to lose weight, none of those things. Like, just feel more in my skin, more me,
but that's amazing.
back to more me.
But that was an amazing moment.
So that was
it's
a
funny
little long-winded.
Well, no, it wasn't, because it
dealio.
was actually my third question to you, was to talk about that moment. Because I thought that was just such a beautiful story and a beautiful transitional moment in your life and what happened there. And I urge everybody to sign up for Gabrielle's newsletters, because that's how I knew all about that, because I read your newsletter. So I think that's pretty amazing. So that is the ultimate segue into.
Yes, Susan Hyatt, Jill.
Yes, Susan Hyatt, Jill.
Yeah.
So, that's great segue into the power of pleasure, and the power that pleasure has played in your life. But now you're in a position where you are helping others tap into that. So I would love you to sort of take us through your principles, the pleasure principles, your perspective, and
so Susan Hyatt has a great line, which is like, the more fun you have, the more money you make. And I'm like all about the Benjamins, baby. It's not everything, but like it's important to me to work. I love my work. I work hard. I should be paid well for the things that I do, like all of us should. And one of the 7 bear principles is pleasure. And she really comes from this philosophy that I have entirely embraced, that it's really through nurturing ourselves and pursuing pleasure that we connect most deeply to our inner voice. It literally, and I'll get into it when I go into my presentation, but it presents an opportunity to understand your senses. It calms the nervous system. It creates better opportunities for sleep and all of these things. So I got really fascinated with that idea. And as a result, thought it would be really fun to do a whole little prezo on the power of pleasure. So can you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay.
Everybody see that?
Everybody see that? Okay. So the power of pleasure. So I got really, when I first started exploring this concept in my own being coached, first of all, I was like, I ain't got no time for pleasure. Even someone who pursues a lot of pleasure and believes in it, I think we've all gotten into a place of in our lives where we feel like you can't rest until, you can't enjoy until, like you have to earn it. And it started to I became really curious about this idea of, but what if you actually made pleasure a priority? What would happen? So this is just a little bit about me. I thought that this was particularly important because as a type A, incredibly driven person, I don't believe in New Year's goals. I do believe in intentions. I mean, I believe in goal setting and all of that stuff, but not a New Year's goal kind of person. And about 3 years ago, I started with choosing a word. And this year, the word surrender hit me like a ton of bricks. And it's been beautiful because it's been really helpful to come back to this word this year. And something I said to Kathi earlier was, surrender is not like, okay, screw it, I give up. It is surrendering to the things we cannot control, surrendering to the idea that good is coming our way, that we can create goodness for ourselves. We can control our thoughts. We can control our relationships to some extent, or at least who we're in relationships with. Sometimes we have to surrender timing or surrender how we think it's going to look. So I invite everybody to sort of explore words that feel good to them, because they're a great just reminder when we get stuck in our rut to, check ourselves. So pleasure facts, and the sources are at the bottom for data geeks, which, I really believe in sourcing stuff. So happier people truly are more productive, perform better in stressful situations, sleep more soundly, live healthier lifestyles, meaning like they like to move their bodies for exercise, they tend to meditate, they actually take vacation time, and they enjoy stronger relationships. Pleasure go-tos, there may not be a big surprise here, but when you ask people what they associate with pleasure, here's what they say. sex, food or dessert, something sweet and indulgent, alcohol or drugs, right? Like smoking or whatever. And as I sort of dug into this, I was like, I can think of like at least 7 different kinds of pleasure. And I bet that there are probably even more categories out there. So go for it. But here's some that I came up with. Oh, wait, why is it not? Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. Before I jump in, Miriam defines pleasure as a noun defined as desire, inclination, a state of gratification, sensual gratification. I love this, frivolous amusement, or a source of delight or joy. Like, who doesn't want some of that?
I want all of that. And I love the color you picked for this particular slide. Like it's an orange creamsicle. You know?
Yeah,
It's like...
yum, right? So as we learn to discover new ways to immerse in pleasure, right, we start to notice the impact in other areas of our life. And you guys can read some of these. But again, like really things start, I want us, and women in particular, because we are so programmed for neglect and deprivation culturally and from the patriarchy. When we give to ourselves, it is that, you know, oxygen mask on you first metaphor. Like we really do have more to give. So it's so important. You know how many clients I have when I'm like, well, what do you do for pleasure? They're like, the laundry. I'm like, no, you know, or a mani-pedi. I'm like, that shit's maintenance, right?
Big
So
difference.
Here we explore 7 areas of pleasure. There's entertainment, right? What do we watch? Sports. I actually, this used to be a picture of J-Lo, which I feel like I wish I had kept in, but I felt like I was very, you know, feminine oriented, but sports, right? So we like to be entertained by things, whether that's a concert or sports. I know COVID has changed a lot of that, but entertainment is a form of pleasure. Because the other thing I do know is that we gravitate towards the same thing. Adventure, right? And adventure really is anything new to the senses. New way to move, something new in nature, something you've never tried before, a new language, picking up a guitar, those kinds of things. Sensual, I think we all know what that is, but not just sexual, right? Like sensual. I work really closely with clients on building really strong morning and evening routines that are focused on pleasure, whether that's really taking the time to buy a gorgeous hand lotion you love and smelling it and rubbing it into your hands for 5 full minutes, even if you have to set a timer, you know? Wow. So sensual is about, you know, really tasting your food and smelling what you're eating and taking the time to use a linen napkin. And so sensual goes beyond what we think.
Love that.
Gastronomical, one of my faves, food and drink, right? Tends to be a go-to for women in sometimes unhealthy ways. We use it a lot, right, to stuff feelings or to mask emotions. So I always like to encourage people to be, we'll see later in the deck, but to just be careful as we explore each area. How cute is that kitty? Comfort, cup of tea, time with your animal, an amazing blanket, you know, a great pair of slippers, the right pajamas. Spiritual can be just real connection with self. If you know, can be religious, can be meditative. Spiritual is really defined by its owner. But really, I invite people to find, if spirituality is nothing else, I'd like it to be an opportunity to connect with your deepest self. It's really what spirituality is about to me. Nature, just time in nature, man, heals the soul. Don't even have to walk in it, just be in it. Like today I went out, I have had a really insanely busy week, and I thought it was one of those days where I put on exercise clothes at 6:30 and I never exercised all day, but I was in them. And
but it was your intention. On my
freaking bike. So I went outside and I walked in my grass in bare feet. Beautiful. You know, and I was like, this is my moment in nature and I'm really going to enjoy it. And like stepped in like a muddy thing. And then I was like really into like just the texture for a minute. And just normally I'd be totally annoyed and have to go rinse my foot. And I just
You went with
gave
it.
myself that moment, which
I
is
love that.
so new for me as as sort of a driven runner of things, and very type A. So here are things I invite people to consider when we think about pleasure. What do you crave? Right? If you're going to look at those 7 categories, like if you got quiet, what do you really need? And I love the sort of Marie Kondo, how she asks, what sparks joy? You can ask yourself, and this is a Susan Hyatt-ism, what feels like love? I love that question. It just gets to the heart of it. Check yourself, right? Old patterns die hard. So if every time you're like, I'm craving a pint of ice cream, I invite you to look if you really are craving a whole pint, or if maybe you just need a bite, right? Or if you're used to doing that because you've always used food as a source of comfort. So that's what I mean by check yourself. Give yourself permission, because both to explore and to see what shows up when you start to explore. Sometimes we're going and kicking and screaming. We do need to give ourselves permission to enjoy pleasure. Again, not transactionally, but because we deserve to pursue that and to be happy. Do it on the daily. Good habits are really to rewire the brain, which is really what life coaching is based on, right? That's why I love it so much, is because it's based on real neurology, which is that if thoughts create patterns of behavior, and behavior creates patterns and ways of being, then it makes sense that to form new habits, right? If I'm going to learn to speak Spanish, I should probably try and practice it every day, or the guitar. Same thing for pleasure. Especially, I have a client, I am not joking, so if you're watching, get to it, girl. But I've been working with her for almost 8 weeks, and all I've ever asked her to do is spend 15 minutes every morning and every night pursuing something of pure pleasure, and she still has not done the assignment. I mean, and I'm sure some of you are laughing, and I'm sure you'd be the same dang way. Explore every type, right? You may hate nature. That's okay. Awesome. I'm glad you know that for you. Move on to something else. These are mine, right? These are the things I discovered. They don't have to be yours. Feel the feels, you guys. So I had been wanting to paddleboard for a really long time. So there's a bunch of things, right? I want to become a surfer. I want to ride a motorcycle, all these things. But paddleboarding was big. And then for my 50th birthday, my husband got me a paddleboard. And then I think for my next birthday, he got me a wetsuit and the booties and the gloves so I can go out in the fall weather. And I went out on this paddleboard, and I get out into the middle of not the ocean, but the bay. And I lost it. I mean, I ugly cried snot. I was moved by the whole thing, but also I think I felt this sense of joy and sorrow. Why have I waited so long to get on a paddleboard? And I think we sometimes underestimate the feelings we feel that show up when we suddenly start to learn what brings us pleasure.
Yeah, and when we connect with that emotion, it's very intense. It can be very intense in that moment.
And I think the discovery of why did I deprive myself of that, or who did I let tell me I couldn't? I shouldn't. You're 50 years old. What are you doing on a paddleboard? Or whatever. I mean, these are all the things that keep us from ourselves. When in doubt, add more pleasure. I really mean it. If you're at a loss or you are beside yourself, find something pleasurable to you. It will recenter your soul.
Double down, double down.
Double down. Double down on pleasure, people. So here are the 5 pleasure principles. Simple. Consistent, right? Do it on the daily. Focus on your thoughts, because it's your thoughts that are going to convince you shouldn't be. Again, who do you think you are being in a bathing suit on a paddleboard at 50? Or who are you? You can't do pleasure. You got laundry to do. You don't have time. You've got little kids. You didn't clean the house, right? All that. Notice what you tell yourself about pleasure. What can you cut? This is such a good one. People tell me all the time, I have no time. I'm like, really? Huh. Show me your
Yeah.
screen time app on your phone right now. And people wet their pants. I'm like, show me how much screen time you have. I'll show you mine if you show me yours. Oh, I'm sorry. You were only on Instagram for 12 hours last week?
Right.
You shitting me? And like, I'm a culprit too. So what can you cut that you really can,
Yeah,
focus
but to your
on
point, you have to make the conscientious effort. You've got to reprioritize and say, I am not going to do that. 2 nights this week where I chose not to turn on Netflix so that I could get some things done that have been on that 3-week to-do list.
Yeah. Or,
There's a choice I had to make.
oh, I'm so glad you said that though. What is on that damn to-do list that you can cut? What is the bullshit? Sorry, now I'm not even drinking alcohol. I was thinking about it though. It's been that kind of week, and it is Thursday at 5:30 on the East Coast.
Right.
But what do we put on our to-do list that really doesn't need to get done, or you can give to someone else?
Exactly.
What
And
of
that
the
you put on there this week, but in 2 weeks won't seem that important either.
Exactly. Or like this whole invisible, don't get me started, invisible workload of women. Like, what are you taking on mentally or literally that you can cut out so you can focus on something joyful?
Oh.
Right? Have fun. Like, I'm telling you, this client that has been avoiding this exercise is like so stressed about it. I'm like, okay. It's supposed to be fun, right? Pleasure. Go back and look at that definition. There's nothing in there that says you should be highly stressed while pursuing pleasure activities, right? So that's it. Kathi, if you guys are interested, I have no idea if you are, but you're welcome to have this little prezo. I can send it as a PDF for Kathi to share with her people.
Yeah, I would love to be able to share it. And I know there are people that haven't been able to make it that signed up that wanted to be here today. So I think it would be really lovely because there's so much beauty in that. And something that comes to mind, Gabriella, in all of that is, and it's a big word that I use frequently around the subject of reinvention, and that is entitlement. That we need to feel entitled to have everything you just said, to be everything you just said. Like, this is our right. And entitlement is a word that I frame as a gift. It is the beauty of recognizing that this is what we need in order. And it goes with the whole philosophy of put your oxygen mask on first. You do that. You are going to radiate joy. You are going to share that energy with others. You are going to attract everything you want around you because you're coming from a place of centeredness and joy. And, and the fact that you are working with people, Gabrielle, and helping them understand that and helping them figure that out. I think, look, one of the biggest questions, and you just identified your 7 pleasure points. But some people, and I hear this a lot when I talk about passion, what are you passionate about? Pursue the things that you're passionate about. And the question I get from so many people so often is, I would, but I have no idea what those things really are.
Yes. And this is a great sort of segue and shameless plug for my life. I created this life assessment tool, you guys, over margaritas being blown off in a bar in New York City. It's a great story, but we'll also send that around. But it's fun because for people who don't know what passion it is or pleasure, like the pleasure deck's great for people to start to think, oh, I'm passionate about nature or adventure or whatever. But this life assessment tool, which Kathi, you've seen, sort of goes around sort of what I found and this guy that I was chatting with over margaritas found to be sort of the 10 most important areas of your life. So you guys will all see that and feel free to take it and send me your score and we can set up a chitty chat afterward if you're interested. But that's a nice way too to invite people to look at, well, what are you passionate about, right? Like, do you like to give back, or do you like to spend time with family, or do you like to organize, or, whatever, I don't know, drive or golf, and if people don't know, people get so torn up about not knowing. And I think what you did really beautifully in your book and is in the hello, are you still in there is, is we have to learn to let ourselves off the hook. And I don't mean like become an irresponsible butthead, right? But like, you have to let yourself, all of these shoulds, I always tell my clients, stop shoulding on yourself because it stinks. You should get should out of your, you could do this, but like this obligatory lie we have been told about the way it's supposed to be, or the way, you know, you, Cindy, are supposed to be acting as a blonde woman of your age and stature, you know, or Andrea, how you're supposed to show up in the world. Like, how dare you have a blue wall, right? Like, there's so much that is put onto us, and constraint and societal pressure and patriarchal pressure and family of origin pressure and this comparative culture, right, that creates all of this chaos, that it's no wonder we're afraid to pursue pleasure. It's like, who's going to come for us? And what I think it all distills down to, and it's so freaking trite, it's almost as bad as the word self-care right now, but like, you have one freaking precious life. And I'm staring down the barrel of 53 on Sunday, people. And I'm like, if I only have 50 years left, I better get a crack-a-lackin', right? And I think if anybody follows me on Instagram, you saw me ridiculously the other day, bored
with
out
your
of my
tea,
gourd.
when you were in the car with your tea. Yes, I saw
and
that.
I like sing Adele, right? I'm like,
and what a voice.
Adele.
Okay, can we talk about that voice of yours? I mean, who knew?
Oh, thank you. I thought it was really funny you talked about the guitar as the reading, because I dabble with guitar, but I am a closet singer. And one of the things I started doing again before COVID was I started singing out again. So I do open mics on Sundays at a bar in Red Bank.
Amazing.
Because I always wanted to be a singer.
Right? I can't even fathom, but the notion of that, like, because I can't sing at all. But wow, what that must feel like. Like, maybe I could read poetry to people, but really, like, that's amazing.
It's a rush. It is the most terrifying and enjoyable, like, really, I get a kick out of it. But the point was, I posted this ridiculous story of me singing Adele and drinking green tea, waiting to pick up my kid from soccer. And then I realized, like, for people who don't know me, they're like, what is this crazy, like, who cares and why are you doing this? And I was like, isn't the point to just have as much fun as possible? Like, for me to show up in the world doing silly things like that, because it does really bring me joy to sit in the car and belt out songs like I am part of a rock band. Like, people in town are like, there she is again, you know? I don't care. Makes me happy. And that is the point. Pack your life with as much joy and pleasure as you can. Why not?
Yeah.
What is the frickin' point of being miserable? Can someone explain this to me? Because I don't get it.
No, and you know, as the tagline on my book says, you know, what are you waiting for, right? What are you waiting for? What you waiting for, right?
What you waiting for, people? Oh my God, I love this
okay,
book
so we have
much.
5 minutes left, and I don't know if anybody, we're getting some really cute and sweet comments in the chat, but does anybody have any questions? You've got the real deal here. She's offering coaching sessions, you know, to get to know her and chat with her. And we're going to send all of that out. But does anybody have any questions? Just, you know, loving the comments in here and the thank yous.
And don't feel pressure. And you guys, you can totally awesome me up right on. Thank you. Would love to.
And Lauren, can you put some links in the chat before we need to sign off on my stuff and Gabrielle's stuff, if you don't mind? But yeah, and awesome. Gabrielle, you know, thank you for sharing this presentation with everybody, because I think to have the ability to take the time to go through and really give thought, you know, we've done workshops on here and I get people writing down questions, but to go back and kind of do it thoughtfully and be able to spend your own time with it and, you know, really find those moments, as Gabrielle's taking that time to connect with ourselves is number one pleasure principle, right? Like, it's so there.
And it gives you a chance to hear the whispers. You know, Oprah calls them whispers, Oh my God, Ronnie, thank you.
And
Oh, thanks,
Kelly,
Kelly.
you
I'm not
guys,
crying, you're crying. I think, I mean, this is really like my life's work is to serve people because I want the world to be happier. I want people not to wait so long in their life to give themselves permission to do all the things. I have a 13-year-old daughter who I do not want spending a moment's notice worrying about her waistline when she can be solving the world's health crisis or the, civil rights issues. And, when we can put our power of humanity into goodness and pleasure and following our purpose, we're all here. We all have huge contributions to make, and they don't have to show up in big, flashy Instagram ways in the world. It's like, follow your heart. If you're meant to be like the badassest dog walker on the planet, awesome. Go do it. Those doggies need you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we don't need to compare, like, find your pleasure because you'll find your voice.
I love that. Don't compare. Don't look at other people's stuff. Make your own, create your own. And we're all individuals. We're all different. We all have different limits, different scopes, different contexts, different everything. I mean, that's the beauty of it. And it's all on our terms. It's that entitlement of, no matter what's going on around you, find that 5 minutes, that 30 minutes, that, that's just
Ronnie.
yours that no one can take away.
Compare and despair. Yeah. I mean, I could go on and on. This, I just want to say thank you again. This has been such a privilege and an honor to be in this space and with all of you incredibly beautiful people. Thank you for spending an hour with me. And I'm happy to answer questions. You can find me on my website. Thank you, Lauren, for dropping it in there. I have a connect to me. That comes straight to me. Like, I'm, as glamorous as I look, I'm still a one-woman show, people. I'm like pinning my bra to my dress today. This should be really behind the scenes, but I was like, I need some more people.
Makeup, hair makeup, please. Tell me about it. I'm like,
I was
okay.
like, makeup, hold, please. I'll be right there. Hair, I'm coming.
Right. So before we sign off, I just want to share, I will send an email to everyone that is registered for today and include all of this and the PDFs of Gabrielle's amazing work that she's shared with us today, so you can connect with her directly. And I'm going to take you out with a little power tool, actually, that is a nice little follow-up to our conversation. It is from it's Power Tool number 6, also from chapter 3. And it's titled, Who Are You? Sorry, I got a lot of tags on this thing, but it's on page 34. And it says, Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. There's a reason he was recognized as an inspired and wise man whom we still quote today. And a few bullet points for you to really think about. Are you open-minded? Do you live with passion? Is your life your creation or someone else's? Do you have a clear-cut definition of who you are and how you want to live? Have you defined your personal self apart from your work self? Are they one and the same? Is it all just a blur? Are you simply treading water because that's what you're accustomed to doing? And the last one is, are you open to change? So
I just got the goosies.
And
do you know what's so great about you ending on that quote? Starting with the whole guitar and sort of music thing was very apropos, because I was a frustrated performer, but ending on Socrates, I was a public speaking major, and my big, we had to do this huge sophomore review to stay in the major, and you had to get a certain grade. And I did a whole thing where I had to analyze a speech according to Socrates and Aristotle and Plato. So that felt very apropos. Plus, I have that page tagged and highlighted, that whole entire power tool.
So does Jill. I love it. Oh, and Jill, I'm so sorry we didn't get to connect today, but I know that's coming. So, Gabrielle, Thank you so much for today. Thank you everybody for being here. Have a beautiful rest of the week and weekend, and really think about what Gabrielle has shared with us today. Take a nugget of that, make it yours. Happy reinventing.